Welcome back to Weekend Walkabout, where we're in our gardens and yours virtually.
We're coming to you from GardenAtoZ.org. I'm Stephen Nicola.
And I'm Janet Makanovich, and we're still in our garden handling a potpourri of timely topics of what's going on right now, because now it's time for roots and courage.
Courage.
Courage, courage, courage.
Courage.
That's
I
us.
got something from the 30s still sticking in our brain.
That's us. And then between us is our daughter, Sonia Nicola, who is handling the chat, the technical problems, and just blows us away with all the things that she manages during these webinars. She's always been a great gardener. She is now a professor at a university, which means that she really knows the technical end of the Zoom. Well, no, not all professors know the technical end, but she does. She's great at it. Put it into chat if you've got a problem with the way that the webinar is running or the way your computer is operating. She probably can help you out with it. Put a question in the chat if it's about gardens, because we can all help, not just Stephen, myself, and Sonia, but the other people in the chat.
Some people here.
Yeah. We call it This Week in Our Garden because it's one of the departments in our website. Our website, What's Up, if you go to our website and click What's Up, you're in our news department where our articles are posted. And in that section are things like the department This Week in Our Garden. We have other departments like our mentors, quotes,
45 mile
an hour garden. But This Week in Our Garden is where we can put the things that are really happening right now, just like we're doing on this webinar. And normally on our webinars, we have a note-taking guide, but not for something that's as packed as this one with a lot of different things. We'll be referring you to the earlier webinars. And even if you're not a subscriber, the note-taking guides from all of our webinars are available to everybody. So we'll tell you as we go along where those are. But right now, at this time of year, it is the primary root growing season. There are a lot of ancient peoples who follow the idea that in the spring, the energy of the earth flows out into the cosmos. And in the fall, it comes back down into the earth. If you think about being a gardener and being out there in that flow, we are right now taking in all the energy from around. And in scientific terms, the plants are taking carbon, all of this excess carbon that we've got, they're taking carbon out of the air and they are putting it into the ground in carbon-based roots and wood that they're growing. And it is happening at an enormous rate right now. I showed you last week what bulbs are doing right now. Those are all new roots that just have started forming and are going to grow amazingly over the fall, all the way until the ground freezes. On the left, you see a little oak that I pulled out with the yellowish root. You can still see what's left of the nut sitting there. Oaks have a two-part germination. They germinate in the fall and grow only the root. See the thick part of the root? That grew all of that thick part of the root up to about as far down as the mulberry goes.
Maybe here.
That was one fall's growth with no green above. The sprout came up this year and now it's grown. You can see that I shredded the root as I got tired of digging to pull it out, going straight down. That's all one fall's growth below the thick part. The mulberry, meanwhile, is just 1 year and growing great guns and taking off. It's the time to get the seedlings, the tree seedlings out, because now is when you can get them before they really anchor themselves. And it's important to think about the roots of the plants that we like. Sona said that she planted some small conifers in 4 6-inch pots, and they dry out so easily that her survival rate is sometimes only 50% over the winter, which she doesn't mind too much because she likes buying plants, she said. But is there something more that I can be doing? Do I need to protect them in some way? We talked a little bit by email, and I had suggested that maybe she could put down, she could lay a cloth over them and cut holes in it and lay the cloth and some mulch, and then have a bucket of water that the cloth could wick water out of underneath the mulch, because it is hard to know the days when it's warm enough in the soil to actually pull water in. But it is hard to do that because they went into the ground with just that little 4-inch pot.
I mean, if she planted it
like that,
that's the main reason it's drying out, because it is so packed with roots in there. You could see what we got out of there, that it's not absorbing the water. It's won't come in.
Well, it does.
I don't think
it does absorb water, but it can only absorb water from a 4-inch circle. But its roots, when you shake out the soil and spread the roots out, the roots were going over almost a 4-foot circle. That's how much water that plant should have. So of course it's going to dry out if you don't pull the roots out. So I talked to Phyllis, a friend of ours. She's in Weston, Massachusetts, and this is the aerial view of her home. Her home is there. And you can take my word for it that the front yard underneath the trees is all garden. And if you look in the back, it just goes and goes and goes and goes. And there's parts that you can't see. You might be able to see all the beds that are there. Most of them filled with conifers. Conifers of all kinds and all sizes, so every color and every nature that you've ever seen. She just loves these plants and loves planting new ones. So I talked to her, I said, what are you doing with your new conifers? Do you lose 50% of your conifers over the winter? She said, I did, especially last winter, I lost quite a few, but I don't think I've ever approached 50%. Her garden is this year being in the new version of the garden tour, version of the Garden Tourist New England. So Phyllis is sometimes open to the public. But she says she does try to mulch, but there's 200 conifers. And lately she's been digging down 10 inches and finding it's very dry. And I said, I'm so glad you said that, Phyllis, because I've been telling people how dry it is. And they say, no, it's not. Well, the surface might be moist because there's dew, but go ahead and dig down a ways and it's dust dry in our yard. So she said, even with watering regularly, she might have to water this winter, but sometimes she would do that when it's really dry. But Phyllis is quite strict about taking the roots out and loosening them out and making them wider. Now, thinking about roots, if you like what's growing overhead, then protect what's underfoot. People do not understand that if the branch is over your head, the roots are under your feet. They are not close to the trunk. They are not deep in the ground. They are right underneath your feet. Here is a very young juniper showing you what the roots do. I tried to put them in the position that they were in the soil as I dug up pretty much all of the root system. They spread two to the right, one to the left. The one to the left is splitting into a couple of pieces, but they're spreading out and relatively shallow. This is a baby spruce, and they're a little more collapsed together than they were, but they're spread out. That little baby spruce that was only 6 inches tall had about 2 feet of root in all directions. And those roots spread, if you can accept my little drawing there, the roots spread radially from the crown. And plants have woody plants have 4 to 11. Nobody knows why that number is what it is or what it's going to be on any given plant, but they have 4 to 11 flare roots or primary roots or first order roots. They're all the same thing. These are roots that get thick as they come to the trunk. They thicken and get thicker and thicker and thicker by the trunk and very rapidly spread outward. Those are flare roots. And if you want to take care of a tree or a shrub, then you have to recognize those roots are there, and you don't want to cut across the spokes of the root system. You don't want to trench across. If you've got to dig, it's actually better to dig straight for the trunk and make a V cut if you have to make a hole, or make a V cut or a trench cut straight to the trunk and then go under the flare roots if you're trenching through to someplace. And there are a number of people that have written us lately about putting in a new driveway, putting in a new septic system, putting in a
seawall
seawall. Teresa, I hope that you got my email and you'll send us back a couple more specifics, because we'd like to talk about that at more depth next week. But those are flare roots that are left there. Flare roots that grew over what was probably the stump of another tree, and that tree has rotted away. But those are what flare roots do. They go out, away. They don't have very many roots close to the absorptive roots close to the tree itself, but they are the main stabilizers of the tree. And each of those 4 to 11 has 25 to 10 to 25% of the roots of the whole tree. So when you look at a tree like this one that Teresa sent a picture of, and she said, we're going to be changing the seawall and the grade. How is my spruce tree going to do? Well, let's look at the tree and say it's got what I could see on this side, 1, 2, 3 flare roots. And from your picture on the other side, it looks like at least 5 flare roots, 2 of them heading toward the water. They probably gradually slope down to maybe 12, 18 inches and then keep going outward. But it's possible that at that tree wall, seawall, that the roots have turned and are making a wall of themselves of their own inside that. We've seen people take retaining walls or planter boxes out from around trees and still have the wall or the box, because behind that wall, root after root was piling up and becoming a solid mass.
Right in front there was a log fell off and the tree was in back, and the tree is now the root just went right along the log.
Yeah. And if you cut a flare root, you don't get another flare root. You get a vigorous root. You get what happens here. If you cut a flare root, you get a lot of smaller roots. If the tree has enough time, enough years, enough decades, one of those roots may become dominant and go out beyond the rest of them, probably will, but it'll never be the same. There'll never be another flare root from the base of the plant. And okay, so that's for roots, and we promise we're going to talk about roots more next week for those of you with the septic tanks and the driveways and whatever. We'll talk more about that next week.
But start thinking about the way the root system actually is.
We were actually supposed to tell you that that's Weekend Walkabout number 83 is preventing construction damage and has a lot of this in it, including diagrams, and the note-taking guide is quite extensive on that one.
That one's a big note-taking guide.
Yeah. Next topic is that we've had a lot of email from people and a lot of pictures. Thank you so much of courageous pruners.
Way to go, guys.
So much so that, and Gretchen, thank you. You kind of started it. You sent the picture and we said, we have to do something. We have to say some kind of celebration for people who said, I'm doing it. I'm getting my pruners and I'm going to go do this.
Look how nice that it looks like a tree.
It doesn't, we don't even have to see that it looked like a bush before and all the way down to the ground. We just have to see that it looks like a beautiful, graceful tree now. So we've started a page. This page is up on our website. It's called Courage, maybe the mentor's greatest gift, or Courage would get you to it. And we have 3 examples up there already. I have about 7, but I have to get the okay from people to use their pictures. But Rita and Bill, Jack and Susan, Gretchen, Therese, Roberta, Bev, everybody, I'll find them, and thank you for sending those pictures in, because to look at what when somebody said, okay, Janet said I could cut them back, and I cut my yews back to almost nothing, bare wood everywhere and a little bit of green on it, and to see them coming back and to have other people see them coming back is to encourage others. You had courage, and that encourages others. I mean, look at those, they're just leaping out all over.
By next spring, you
won't be able to tell.
No.
Yeah. The boxwoods at, oh dear, I've forgotten. Oh, these are Bev's, I think, boxwoods, where she said they really just needed to have something done to them. So she cut them back hard.
Yeah.
And look at them.
Yeah.
She cut them back hard in the spring, and look at them already. Janet, a different Janet, cut her burning bushes all the way to the ground because we said they'd come back. And she said, you know, it's a year later and they're not coming back. And then I look at them and realize they are coming back. But the rabbits are eating them every time they come up.
They've been coming back and getting nibbled on.
Yeah. And oh, now I forgot. No, this is Rita and Bill's. So I've forgotten who did the first one. No, this is Rita and Bill's. And they reacquired a patio porch. I mean, look, the first picture, you can't even tell that there's anything between that shrub and the house.
There's no chair, there's no. Yeah.
And that's an immediate change. They just cut all the way down to where there was growth at the bottom. Roberta?
Yes, you told me it was.
I think this Roberta's the Coosa dogwood. You got to look, but look, there's at least a foot, maybe 15 inches of that Coosa dogwood taken off, but you can't really tell. It's beautiful. She's keeping it small. So we have pruning to keep small, which is Walkabout 116, and there's a handout that goes with pruning evergreens, pruning foundation plants, pruning overgrown plants. Please look into this. On the website, you can either download or look at the schedules for season 1, season 2, season 3, and read through the titles. If you're a subscriber, you can download the list of all of the links, because right now all of the links to all of the recordings are in one document, and you can just read through that, or because it's a PDF, you can like digitally search for what you're looking for. Or you can come prune with us. This Tuesday, the 20th of September, we'll be in Royal Oak, Michigan. This arborvitae should be pruned every 2 years, but it's been 3 years now, and this is 3 years ago. we're going to go and prune it to keep it this size. So it'll be bigger than this when we get there, and we will make it this size again, and we'll show you the pictures. But you can come join us. We've got a few people already interested in doing it, and we can only have a few people more. But if you send us an email, it's first come, first served. What questions do you have? I don't see. I see something here. It's full.
Sorry. Yep. There's plenty of questions. I thought I had a minute to go grab my tea. I did not. Okay.
Sorry.
No worries. No worries. There should be a webcam following me dashing through the house as I hear.
And we were busy listening to our dogs whooping, saying, hey. Okay.
Yep. So Pat is asking, what's the best way to spread out the roots when you buy a plant that is so root bound and dense?
There's no one best way. For the most part, we soak or rinse the root ball well, take a look at it, and quite often we have to cut the bottom of the pot off like we're cutting off a wheel of cheese, because the roots go to the sides of the pot, down, and then twist around, and all of the knots are in the bottom. So if you cut the bottom off, you now have sides that you can put your hands in, and you'll find that there's not much root in the middle of the pot, that the roots went down to the outside and then stayed down there where the water was. So on the inside, you can put your hands in once you've cut the bottom out and pull outward. Sometimes though, the roots are wrapped all the way around. Quite often they are, and we have to unwrap around and we cut some. Go ahead and cut. It's not going to cost the plant its life to cut roots. It's actually going to help it so that it can grow outward. But take a look at our webinar, Plant It Well, even if the roots are wrong. That's our number 2 or 3 webinar. And it's on the free webinars page because it's an extremely important topic, and we want everybody to do that.
Right. Thanks for that. In terms of this section, we've got a sort of lingerer from last time around. Denise was looking for suggestions for a fall flowering perennial in a mostly miniature or dwarf conifer garden. For instance, Denise Cora's front yard.
Where did I put Tony Resnick's handout? At the Conifer Society, Tony Resnick, who spoke to us about color through the year, and it's just a wonderful year-round color, is Tony Resnick. He's got an incredible rock garden. He gave a list of plants specifically for dwarf conifer people. And of the ones that bloomed in the fall, I'm pretty sure that one of them was a calamint, a dwarf calamint, and it was just gorgeous. Another was the September gentian, Gentiana septemphida. And then there was another one that was a Veronica. But I'll see if I can find that handout, and maybe we can get him to write us an article for the website.
Oh, okay, and one that just came in from Teresa, who I know has to leave today. I have lost 2, maybe 3 arborvitaes that I planted this year. I have pulled and cut roots. I used a plant/root starter. Any thoughts on what she might be doing wrong?
100% of the arborvitaes that we've looked at nurseries and at properties have been put too deep into the pot, some of them all the way to the bottom of the pot. Literally, when they're repotted, up potted to the next size pot at some point in production, in order to get that chunky, tall thing to stand up straight, they stick the trunk down to the bottom of the pot and then put dirt all around it. And the bark ends up rotting on the part that's buried and growing adventitious roots, little roots that never become flare roots that can't support it physically or water-wise.
And those are often mistaken for the root mass.
Yeah. So generally with arborvitaes, we have to clear off a lot of soil. Sometimes half the depth of the pot or more is soil that has to be taken away from the trunk of the tree, and the roots spread out. Sometimes we even have to stake them their first year or so because they're not able to hold themselves up. But it is a huge problem. Arborvitaes,
we're seeing it.
Mortality is incredibly high.
A lot of arborvitae hedges were put up in this area, and we're seeing 1/3 to 1/2 mortality, even higher.
And not just here. We drove to Iowa and looked and said
same thing.
And we worked in Massachusetts for a long time, and you see the same thing across the country. Arborvitaes are being produced in a way that's making them ticking time bombs. They're gonna.
They so dense they fall over easy if you put them in a pot, right? They can't get the bottom of the pot. I think.
But we dug up arborvitaes that had been planted. That's the year before by a client, in March of the next year, when I saw what had happened, and she had 30 arborvitae, she bought various sizes from little to 5-foot arborvitae. We dug every one of them up, cleared off the soil, set them back up higher. Some of them we had to stake, and of the 30 that went in that we handled that way, I think 26 made it. So it's possible to save them.
Yep. So Teresa, I don't think it's you feeling like a failure. It's forces beyond some of our control, but keep an eye out for that deep planted.
And your use of that term is rewarding to me in a way, because we've been telling growers, look, you've got young people buying a house for the first time, new gardeners who are being turned off gardening by being a failure with the plants that you tell them are supposed to be their instant hedge.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're confirming that is the feeling that even an experienced gardener gets.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's what we've got for now. Michelle, I've just seen your question come in, and I'll just save it for the next round, and we can get moving on.
Okay, because we want to go on out of roots and courage in our garden. We'll end up this segment and start a new one here so that your video will not be so long. Stick with us for bulbs.